My best friend and I both married into the Pierce family. She married the A-lister younger brother. I married the award-winning actor, the older one. 6 months later, my bestie decided to get a divorce. That night, Alan, the actor, was on a talk show when the host asked, "We're hearing that your brother was photographed spending the night with the actress Sienna, and now there are rumors of a divorce. What are your thoughts on that?" Alan looked straight into the camera and said flatly, "Oh. Me too, probably." Alan wasn't wrong. Because right now, my best friend is sobbing on the sofa in my room, while outside the door, Finn is on his knees, begging for a chance to explain. I have to say, though, the custom soundproof doors I had imported from Germany are seriously amazing. Aside from the sound of his knocking, you can't hear a word he's saying. My bestie, Sophie, stared at the video on her phone, Finn and some actress walking into a hotel room to spend the night together, and bit her lip, hard. I'm divorcing him. I have to. My heart ached for her. That bastard Finn. I can't believe it. I really thought he was in love with Sophie. It was one of those May December romances where he was younger, and he'd chased her for over a year before she finally gave in. After they got married, he was actually pretty good to her. But now it looks like he's just another rich playboy. Sophie looked at me, her eyes brimming with tears. Are you going to leave him? She knew, of course. Alan and I had been married for 6 months, but he was always so busy filming that he'd only come home once every few months. He didn't even touch me on our wedding night. Everyone says Alan has a long-lost love who died young. No one's ever seen her, it's just a rumor in our circle, but if she weren't dead, knowing Alan's personality, there's no way it would have been my turn, right? I refused to believe it back then. Banking on my status as the eldest daughter of the Booth family, I proposed a marriage alliance. Besides being drawn to Alan's ridiculously handsome face, it was also because my best friend, Sophie, was marrying his younger brother, Finn. In Sophie's words, if we married into the same family, we'd have backup when fighting a wicked mother-in-law. With my best friend playing matchmaker, Alan didn't say no. Who knew that after we got married, he wouldn't even touch me? At first, I thought he had some kind of medical issue. I secretly tried to take him to a men's health clinic to see a specialist, but Alan's face went dark, and he just dragged me right back home. Thinking about it now, he was probably just staying pure for his dead first love. Ugh, like he graduated top of his class from the School of Male Virtue or something. With a face like that, broad shoulders, a narrow waist, and a great ass, he won't let anyone touch him. Who is he trying to tempt? And if he was so committed to being celibate, why agree to a marriage alliance in the first place? I clenched my jaw and looked at Sophie. If you're divorcing him, I'm divorcing him. Sophie wiped away her tears. Deal. I'll do it today, you do it tomorrow. Otherwise, it'll look too obvious. She had a point. I immediately agreed. Deal. After we made our plan, Sophie opened the door and saw Finn kneeling right outside. He was a year younger than her and had that sweet, puppy dog look to begin with. Now, with the corners of his eyes all wet, he looked even more handsome. Honey, I can explain. Sophie laughed. Too late. I'm all out of tears. A man only gets to make me cry once. You want forgiveness? After you spent the whole night in a hotel with her? They even found a used condom wrapper on the floor. You want to explain? Who the hell wants to hear your explanation? We're getting a divorce. With that, Sophie lifted her chin, squared her shoulders, and strode downstairs in her 3-inch heels. That aura, I've known her for 10 years, and this was the first time I'd ever seen her look so fierce. As for Finn, his face went deathly pale. I silently gave my bestie a thumbs up. I also whipped out my phone, snapped a picture of her commanding silhouette, touched it up, and sent it to her. She replied almost instantly. How's it look? Your girl's a badass, right? I bet that little punk is dying inside. His face was probably white as a sheet, right? She even guessed that? I was about to reply when I happened to see that little sneak hiding in a corner by the first-floor staircase, a smug look on her face as she looked at her phone. You'd never guess she was the same person who was just crying her eyes out over love. That's my girl. Her mental fortitude is truly on another level. Flawless. Obviously. That night, Sophie started packing her things to leave. I quickly went over and linked my arm with hers. You're leaving now? Wait for me, let's go together. We can sleep together tonight. It's not like Alan's coming home anyway. Sophie nodded in agreement. She knew Alan and I still hadn't, done it. Whenever the Pierce brothers were out, Sophie and I would grab our little purses, slip on our heels, and go check out new restaurants. We'd gossip and trash talk the Pierce brothers over afternoon tea. Not a single good word was said. Sophie had it better than me. When she got home, she could still pretend to be deeply in love with Finn, fussing over him and casually asking about his endorsement fees for the month. Then Finn, completely charmed and eating out of her hand, would hand over his credit cards. I would stand beside them, watching with a hint of envy. It wasn't until Alan frowned and handed me his card, too, that I finally gave him a small smile. But his gaze darkened, and the tips of his ears quietly turned red. His perfect Adam's apple bobbed slightly. He really was the ultimate unattainable heartthrob. It just made you want to be the one to pull him down from his pedestal. I thought maybe I was finally getting to him. That night, as a little reward, I stealthily changed into the sailor-style outfit I'd bought that afternoon on Sophie's suggestion. I was a little nervous at first, but then I remembered how, when I tried it on for Sophie earlier, the little perv got a nosebleed and insisted on getting a closer look. If women reacted like that, conquering a guy like Alan should be a piece of cake, right? Unfortunately, when I slipped into bed and wrapped my arms around Alan's waist, his Adam's apple bobbed, and he stood up, grabbed his pillow, and went to the study. Before he left, he saw me sitting on the bed in shock. He even thoughtfully draped the comforter over me, wrapping me up completely. It was the middle of summer, with the AC on, and he wasn't worried about giving me heatstroke. Sophie dragged me upstairs by the hand. She told our housekeeper, Mrs. Davis, to pack up all her things, ready to be taken away first thing in the morning. Even though Sophie wasn't short on cash, she refused to leave anything behind, not wanting Finn to get the satisfaction. Knowing her, once she left, Finn's bedroom would be practically empty. But there were so many things, one car definitely wouldn't be enough. Sophie pouted. Even if it doesn't fit, I'm taking it. Am I supposed to leave it for some other woman? I nodded. True. You have to be frugal where it counts. I'm not short on money either, but the thought of someone else using my things, or worse, throwing them out with a look of disgust, just felt weird. So, I gave Mrs. Davis my instructions too. Mrs. Davis, could you please pack up my things as well? Mrs. Davis had been with the family at the main estate for years. She had been downstairs earlier and heard the conversation between Sophie and Finn. Not to mention, she was there in the afternoon when Sophie and I were on the couch trash-talking the Pierce brothers and watching TV, only to see the news break about Finn entering a hotel with that actress. She knew why Sophie wanted a divorce. But hearing that I was also packing my things still caught her by surprise. I decided there was no point in hiding it anymore. Sophie and I were leaving together anyway, they'd find out sooner or later. I broke into a wide grin. I'm getting a divorce, too. Mrs. Davis was so shocked the rag in her hand fell to the floor. She knew how close Sophie and I were. Finn and Alan were both incredibly busy, so after we got married, Sophie and I chose to live together. She was on the second floor, and I was on the third. We kept each other company every day, complaining about the Pierce brothers together. It got to the point where Finn would complain that even in his own home, the two of them felt like they were being ostracized by us. After a long moment, Mrs. Davis looked at Finn, who was standing by the dining table, and sighed. She didn't say anything in the end. But she had watched him grow up. She went over to offer some advice. Mr. Finn, you should probably let Mrs. Pierce go and cool down for a bit. If you keep hovering around her like this, she'll only get angrier. Finn looked at Mrs. Davis with a glimmer of hope and nodded. He could only watch helplessly as Mrs. Davis packed up both of our belongings. As Sophie and I went upstairs, I saw Finn pull out his phone and call Alan. When he spoke, he sounded like he was on the verge of tears. "Alan, you need to come home, man. Something terrible has happened." "Yeah, my wife wants a divorce." "What do you mean it has nothing to do with you? You're about to get divorced, too." Mrs. Davis sighed again. She also made a call to the family estate. Both sons getting divorced at the same time. When the old man woke up, his world was probably going to come crashing down. That night, before snuggling up with Sophie, I sent Alan a text. "Come home tomorrow morning." He replied quickly. "Okay." I let out a cold laugh. Looking back at our past conversations, every single one of his replies was just as terse. My heart had grown cold. In the middle of the night, I found myself drawn to the door of Alan's study. I'd never been in here. Alan never let me in. I figured there must be something inside he didn't want me to see. But now, I was determined to see it. I pushed the door open. The walls of the study were completely covered in photos. The rumor about Alan's long-lost love had started a few years ago when someone accidentally saw the photos in his study. There was also a first aid kit. I was about to walk over for a closer look when Sophie called me from the doorway. I had no choice but to turn and leave. Early the next morning, when Sophie and I came downstairs with our bags, the two Pierce brothers were already sitting on the sofa, waiting. Seeing us, Alan frowned. Finn's eyes went red immediately. "Honey, listen to me, He stammered, but couldn't get another word out. After all, when he woke up, that woman was already in his hotel room. How could he possibly explain that? Alan was as cool and distant as ever. But when he saw Sophie and me pull out our marriage certificates, his jaw tensed. "The situation hasn't been fully investigated yet. Don't you think you're being a little impulsive?" I looked at Alan, sitting perfectly upright on the sofa, his broad shoulders and narrow waist accentuated by his black trousers and white shirt. I mimicked his aloofness and gave a faint smile. "I'm not being impulsive. This has nothing to do with them. Even if they weren't getting a divorce, I was ready to leave." Alan's long, slender fingers twitched. "Why?" I scoffed. "I'm just not in love with you anymore." Pretty much everyone in our circle knew I was crazy about Alan. After we got married, in the beginning, would constantly post pictures of him and links to his new shows on my social feed. I even bought out a theater for everyone on my friends list when his movie premiered. I saw a flicker in Alan's eyes as he pressed his lips together and stared at me. "Does it have to be this way?" I nodded. I was a Booth, the only daughter of a wealthy family. Marrying Alan was a match of equals, but I was also the sole heiress, spoiled since birth. I'd played the role of Alan's devoted puppy for 6 months. That was enough. Over on the other side, faced with Sophie's impatience, Finn was stammering, unable to form any kind of explanation. His face was just terrifyingly pale. I knew Sophie wasn't as nonchalant as she appeared, but she had a fiery temper and would never tolerate what Finn did and stay with him. By the time Finn and Alan rushed to the villa, my family's driver had already loaded all our things into the car. Just as a heavy silence fell, a black Maybach pulled up to the gate. Finn's mother burst in. She was also my and Sophie's mother-in-law. She always wore exquisite makeup and was impeccably dressed. But at this moment, she had rushed over wearing nothing but a silk nightgown, and her voice trembled as she spoke. "Both of you are getting divorced?" Her perfectly made-up face was a mask of disbelief, as if she couldn't possibly accept it. "It's no wonder. Waking up to find both your daughters-in-law are leaving would rattle anyone." She looked like her world was ending. But she was the stepmother, and Finn was her biological son, so she couldn't really interfere in my and Alan's affairs. She knew perfectly well why Sophie wanted a divorce. The scandal had rocked all of Los Angeles. Everyone knew Finn had spent the night with an actress. A man and a woman, alone. To say nothing happened was impossible. To make matters worse, a housekeeper had leaked that they found a used condom wrapper in the room. That was the nail in the coffin. Sophie's family was well off, but not in the same league as the Pierces. Initially, the Pierce family had been against Finn marrying her. But seeing her son refuse to eat or drink, his mother's heart ached with tears, and she reluctantly agreed. Of course, she didn't care for me either. You could tell from Sophie's explosive temper that I wasn't exactly a docile little thing. I had a reputation for being spoiled. But I was a Booth, a perfect match for Alan, and she was just the stepmother, so she couldn't say much to me. Instead, she turned to Sophie with a frown and tried to persuade her. This is going to have a huge impact on Finn's career. My son is out working, he has to entertain clients. He got drunk. What happened wasn't what he wanted. Besides, how many men in the entertainment industry are completely clean? You're married. Sometimes you just have to grin and bear it. She was about to continue, arguing that a divorce would be bad for Finn's career now that they were married. But Finn, seeing the cold smile on Sophie's face, suddenly roared, lifting his head in agony. Mom, stop talking. This is my fault. I chimed in from the side. Grin and bear it? Mom, no, Aunt Joan, if you're so magnanimous, why did you fire Dad's female secretary last month? Why should she have to grin and bear it? My bestie has the looks, the body, and her own money. Who would be desperate enough to be a doormat in your family? Sophie squeezed my hand and scoffed. A huge impact on his career? I haven't even sued him for damages yet. 2 years of my youth wasted on a dog. We went back and forth, and Finn's mother almost fainted from rage. Luckily, Mrs. Davis, who had been watching the drama unfold, rushed over and tried to bring her around. The woman, so used to her life as a society maven, lay pathetically on the floor. It took a few seconds for her eyes to flutter open. You too. Fine. You want a divorce? Then get one. We both shrugged and said in unison. Who asked you? We're all adults. What does getting divorced have to do with our elders? We were confident. The two of us against the one of them? No contest. As I turned to leave, I thought I saw a hint of a smile in Alan's eyes. Damn it. Is he really that happy? The more I thought about it, the angrier I got. I stomped to the car in my heels. Sophie, still holding my hand, nearly tripped. Hey, wait up. I know you're in a hurry, but don't be in that much of a hurry. After leaving the Pierce estate, I briefly explained the divorce to my mom. She was disappointed, of course. Alan had always brought them gifts when he traveled, and she thought we were getting along well. She never expected us to divorce so quickly. But she's never been one to force me into anything. She just told me to take some time off and rest at home. Sophie was in a bad mood, so she decided to stay at my place for a while. My mom already knew her well and came over to ask. Sophie, honey, I heard you and Kathy are planning to open a coffee shop together? Seeing me wink, she caught on. That's right, Auntie. My mom hesitated. She said, you're investing $200 million? What kind of scale are we talking about? How big is this place going to be? What was I supposed to do? I'd realized that a lot of the things I brought back were actually gifts from Alan. I couldn't just take advantage of him. I had to give the money back. But selling them on the second-hand market would mean a huge loss, and besides, if Alan saw me resorting to that, where would my pride be? My mom stared at us, her face grim. $400 million for a coffee shop. What, are you trying to monopolize the global coffee supply chain? Sophie shot me a look. I had to shoo my mom away. Sophie was so mad she looked like she was about to strangle me. $400 million. If you'd said 10 or 20 million, I could have helped you spin it. But $400 million, Kathy. In the middle of our playful banter, my phone rang. It was Alan's father. Kathy, could you come by the estate tonight? I agreed. Bring Sophie with you. He knew about our friendship. After I hung up, I got a call from Alan. Kathy, if you don't want to come, you don't have to. I'll handle it. I refused. It was a business marriage, after all. There were still things that needed to be sorted out. When Sophie and I arrived at the old estate, Finn and Alan were already standing at the door waiting. Inside, the floor was covered in shattered porcelain. Mr. Pierce, Sr. looked at us. Kathy, do you two absolutely have to get divorced? A family losing 2 wives at once, are you trying to give people more to gossip about? I laughed, exasperated. I have no idea how Finn and Alan grew up with this bunch of weirdos. Let me tell you, if you get divorced, it's your reputations as women that will be ruined. Alan cut him off and walked over to me. Kathy, I'll take you home. The plan was to have a serious talk, but now it was clear that wasn't going to happen. Sophie still had things to discuss with Finn, so they left in a car first. I didn't have a ride, so I had to agree to leave with Alan. I couldn't just stay here, could I? Finn's mother suddenly laughed behind me. Kathy, congratulations. You're finally getting away from a psycho. My pupils contracted slightly. And you're lucky he's willing to let you go. Alan shoved her aside, his face panicked as he looked at me. I said coolly, it has nothing to do with me anymore. Of course, I wasn't going to fall for her provocation. She just wanted to see me get angry and use the Booth family to go after Alan, didn't she? But whatever Alan was, we were already getting divorced. I had known about the Pierce family's dirty laundry for a long time. The fact that Finn was only 3 months younger than Alan was enough to tell you about the family scandals, not to mention the story of Alan's mother jumping from a building, which was known all over Los Angeles. Mr. Pierce, Sr. was cold-blooded. He just quietly brought Finn back into the family. Thankfully, the 2 brothers had a decent relationship. But they had both moved out. Other than for my wedding, I had only been here once and never came back. I remembered that a wedding gift Sophie had given me was still at the villa in the hills. I asked Alan to drive me back there. After grabbing my things, I was ready to leave immediately. Alan grabbed my hand. Kathy. It seemed like he wanted me to stay. I shook his hand off. Mr. Pierce, please call me Kathy from now on. Alan's face paled, his fingertips digging into his palms so tightly that I could even see blood welling up. Noticing my gaze, Alan instinctively hid his hand behind his back. Can I take you home? This was a villa in the hills. You couldn't get a cab here in the middle of the night, and it was a good half-hour drive from downtown. I really wanted to be like the heroines in novels and refuse him. But I did not want to walk back. Not only was it dangerous late at night, but I'm just not the type to endure hardship. So I nodded. A flicker of a smile crossed Alan's eyes, as if he had expected me to agree. The next second, he grew tense again. Can I use the restroom first? Seeing Alan like this, so different from his usual aloof, godlike image, my heart softened for some reason. Okay. After I spoke, Alan glanced at me and then hurried to the restroom. When he came out, his fingers were slightly damp. Once in the car, I quietly stared out the window. The landscaping here was excellent. I could even see the faint, flickering lights of a few scattered fireflies. They twinkled gently. As we passed under a dim streetlight, I saw Alan's reflection in the window as he drove. He kept glancing at me. I turned my head. He immediately looked away. Perhaps caught staring, the tips of his ears turned red. I was suddenly intrigued. You were just looking at me. His eyelashes fluttered as he mumbled an affirmative. I chuckled softly. Damn it. He didn't dare look at me for the entire 6 months we were married, and now that we're getting a divorce, he starts staring? He wouldn't even glance at me in a sailor outfit, and now he's trying to act like some pining ex. Why were you looking at me? I pressed him. Alan answered almost instinctively, because you're beautiful, Kathy. After saying it, he clamped his mouth shut. My interest waned, and I didn't push any further. A flash of regret crossed Alan's eyes, and he didn't speak again. It wasn't until the car stopped in front of my house that he finally spoke. "We're here." I nodded, still thanking him before turning and walking through the gate. It was already very late, and my parents were long asleep. A single, soft yellow light was left on in the house. A warmth spread through my heart as I went upstairs and took a bath. When I came out in a silk slip dress and walked towards the vanity, I saw that the black Maybach hadn't left. It was still parked where he had dropped me off. Alan's well-defined hand rested on the car window, a cigarette between his fingers. On his slender, pale wrist was a watch with a deep blue face. I remembered it was one I had specially commissioned for him shortly after we got married, when I was out shopping with Sophie. When he received the gift, he had thanked me coolly, not seeming to like it very much. But the very next day, I received a complete set of blue diamond jewelry. The price was staggering. Sophie had remarked at the time that while Alan was cold, he was at least generous and willing to spend money. That watch, it seemed like Alan wore it every day. A ridiculous thought flashed through my mind, but I quickly dismissed it. If he really liked me, he wouldn't have been so cold. He probably just liked the watch. Alan lifted his head, and his gaze met mine through the floor-to-ceiling window. He nervously extinguished the cigarette. I looked away and drew the curtains. Everything went back to normal. There were less than 10 days left until the divorce cooling-off period ended. Sophie and I had a date to go shopping. At the restaurant, Sophie, as if by instinct, started chattering excitedly. "Hey, let me tell you, Finn, he..." Her voice died. It was our old routine, gossiping about the Pierce brothers over afternoon tea. Sophie was silent for a moment. "Come on, let's go clubbing. New man, new life. No more heartbreak, only love." I remembered that morning, my phone had pushed a notification with news that Finn and the actress Sienna had been photographed together again by the paparazzi. I nodded. Unlike me, I had only known Alan for 6 months. We had only been married for a few months. But Finn and Sophie had been together for over a year. Sophie always said she didn't like younger guys and preferred older men, but everything she said was always, directly or indirectly, about Finn. I knew she was hurting, so I went out with her to let loose. Watching Sophie on the dance floor, waving her hands and jumping around, I remembered her usual bright, sunny self and felt a sense of relief. I can't dance. It's not that I don't want to, but I'm hopelessly uncoordinated. In Sophie's words, if I ever got on the dance floor, should just pretend I don't know her. Fortunately, I wasn't really interested anyway. I quietly ordered a drink and sat on the sofa, watching. Sophie was naturally radiant, and it didn't take long for someone to come over and hit on her. He was Finn's type, looked young. I looked away. I didn't know what kind of drink this was. Sophie had ordered it. It wasn't strong at all, it even had a fruity taste. I was thirsty, so I drank a little more than I should have. A man in black trousers and a white shirt walked towards me from across the room. The manager was next to him. He looked so much like Alan. But I knew he would never be in a place like this. I stared blankly. Just then, I heard Sophie cry for help. I quickly stood up and instinctively headed towards the dance floor. But I saw Sophie being thrown over Finn's shoulder. Next to them was the guy who had been hitting on her. He and Finn seemed to be arguing about something. My only thought was of Sophie. I started walking towards them, but I was getting dizzier and dizzier, and then I collapsed. In the last second before I blacked out, I felt a warm hand on my waist and heard a soft whisper, "Kathy." I was woken up by the sound of a car horn. When I opened my eyes, I saw Alan's cold, sharp gaze fixed on the driver in front of us who was relentlessly honking. Sensing that I was awake, Alan turned his head. I stared at him blankly. The streetlight cast a glow into the car, and I saw Alan's high-bridged nose and tense jawline. Further down was his perfect, round Adam's apple. As if sensing my stare, it bobbed slightly. I felt my mouth go dry. I looked up and saw, under his dark, tousled hair, his long, narrow eyes held a trace of concern. "Kathy? You're awake? Are you okay?" I couldn't hear a word he was saying. My eyes were fixed on his impossibly beautiful lips, opening and closing. What was he saying? Those lips, they looked very kissable. Seeing my dazed expression, Alan frowned and sped up. When we stopped at a red light, he glanced at me again. I finally couldn't resist. My hand shot out and wrapped around his Adam's apple. As a connoisseur of spicy romance novels, I knew that was a delicacy. Alan's Adam's apple bobbed again, his eyes darkening. Seeing my vacant expression, the veins on the back of his hand pulsed as he restrained himself, grabbing my hand. He placed it on my lap. I was not satisfied. I reached out again, and this time, the quick-witted Alan caught my hand. Cars behind us started honking. A vein throbbed in Alan's temple. His voice was hoarse. "Kathy, stop messing around." With that, he let go of my hand, quickly loosened his tie, and carefully tied the dark silk around my wrists. Alan let out a breath of relief. It wasn't until we were downstairs at the Pierce villa that Alan opened the car door and got out. He then lifted me out of the passenger seat. As he laid me on the bed, some of my consciousness returned. I felt Alan take off my heels and cover me with a blanket, and I got angry. I'm a beautiful woman, for crying out loud. Am I really that unappealing? The alcohol hit me again, and I pushed Alan down, pinning him beneath me. His body tensed, his fingertips trembling slightly, and his voice was strained with control. "Kathy, don't do this." I let out a soft laugh. "Don't do what, Alan?" Not long after Finn and Sophie got married, Sophie complained about being lonely, and Finn, doting on his wife, let her bring me over to live with them. Finn and Alan lived together, but Alan was usually away, leaving just the newlyweds at home. To avoid disturbing them, I lived on the 3rd floor. Alan's room was across from mine. One morning, the newlyweds came to my door, and Sophie threw it open with a bang. "It's 5 in the afternoon, and you're still not up. How late are you going to sleep?" Finn joined in, mocking me. She was probably up all night playing games. Or maybe chatting with some hot guy. Sophie saw me still burrowed under the covers and laughed in exasperation. "Go on, keep playing. No sleep, just playing games until 3, 4, 5 in the morning, making sure everyone knows you're single. If you had a man, you wouldn't be stuck playing games all night. I've already moved on to playing with my husband." Just as I was about to burrow back under the covers and go back to sleep, Sophie rushed over, yanked my comforter off, and threw it aside. Finn had already left for the film set. She knew no one else was home. But then I saw, across the hall, Alan opening his door. His face was as cold and perfect as jade. He glanced at me, then immediately turned and walked away. Only then did I remember that my nightgown had slipped down to my waist. I nearly screamed in terror. To make it up to me, Sophie took me on a shopping spree at the mall. When we got back, I took my new swimsuit to the pool for a dip. After splashing around for a few laps, my calf suddenly cramped up. It was Alan who lifted me into his arms and set me down by the edge of the pool. After that, I developed a crush on Alan. He was handsome and had that untouchable, godlike sensuality that just made you want to be the one to conquer him. When Sophie found out, she naturally did everything she could to set us up. Soon after, she had Finn ask Alan if he would consider a marriage alliance. Alan refused at first, but then, for some reason, he agreed. But after we got married, I hadn't even gotten a single kiss. We were about to get divorced anyway. It would be a waste not to sleep with him. The more vulnerable he looked, the more I wanted to see him lose control. The moment our lips met, both Alan and I stiffened. He kept his lips pressed shut, his fingertips trembling. I didn't know what I was doing, so I tried everything I could think of. He finally parted his teeth, his eyes dark, his breathing quickening. I suddenly felt a little scared. Just as I was about to pull away, he pressed my head, rolled over, and pinned me beneath him. Our breaths mingled. He kissed me like he was trying to devour me. My lips were numb, but he kept plundering. His fingertips pressed hard against my ears. For some reason, it felt thrilling, and my whole body went limp. He let out a soft laugh. But soon, I was the one laughing. I was laughing so hard my whole body trembled. In the dim light, Alan's eyes were red, filled with helplessness and anxiety. "Kathy, I can't find it." He looked so frustrated he seemed about to cry. I never imagined something so embarrassing could happen. My spicy novels never mentioned this. Alan's embarrassment gradually turned into self-loathing. My heart softened. I took his hand and guided it downward. His eyes lit up. He was constantly trying to please me. Clumsily trying to make me feel good. A man in his late 20s, he seemed to have regressed, exploring the world with his mouth, leaving no corner uncharted. The moonlight was bright outside. A long time later. I said, my voice thick with tears, "Okay, that's enough." He stopped. He silently carried me into the bathroom. But I could clearly feel that his own desire had not yet faded. I looked at him, puzzled. He lowered his gaze, his Adam's apple bobbing, and squeezed a dollop of creamy white body wash into his palm. "You're tired." So, he could control himself, as long as I looked at the man, his forehead still glistening with a light sheen of sweat, and my heart softened again. I arched my body slightly, offering myself to his hand. I laughed softly and wrapped my arms around his neck. And whispered a secret in his ear. He looked at me, his eyes dark and deep, then lifted his leg and stepped into the bathtub. When I woke up, it was already the afternoon of the next day. Alan was gone. The once messy room was now spotlessly clean. No one would ever guess the madness that had unfolded here last night. My body was a little sore. When I'd left, I took all my things with me, which meant I had no clean clothes to change into now. Yesterday's clothes seemed to have been taken away. Even if they hadn't been, I wouldn't have worn them again. I'd been drinking and had gone to a bar. Alan's closet was filled with nothing but identical pairs of trousers and shirts. Besides that, there were only a few sets of silk pajamas. I took one set. The pants were way too big for me, so I just slipped on the black silk top. The neckline was a bit loose. I also borrowed a pair of Alan's underwear. Even though Alan's shirt was long, I couldn't just walk out like this. My phone buzzed. It was a message from Sophie. She and Finn were at a hotel. Downstairs was empty. Even Mrs. Davis was gone. I called out for Alan, but there was no answer. As I passed the study, I saw the door was ajar and suddenly remembered the wall full of photos I had seen in this room. This time, I saw the photos clearly. They were all of me. "Are you scared?" Alan's cold, suppressed voice sounded from behind me. I instinctively took 2 steps back, spun around in a panic, and saw Alan standing there, his dark, melancholic eyes trembling slightly. He reached out with his well-defined fingers and touched my face. "Are you scared?" "Alan, you..." Why? Why was his study filled with photos of me? From 17 until now, when did Alan even meet me? Didn't we only meet after Finn and Sophie got married? Alan lowered his head, moving closer to me. He stopped only when our foreheads were touching. His lips were so close to mine that I subconsciously held my breath. "Kathy, do you have any idea how much I used to want to lock you in here with me?" My eyes widened slightly. I looked at Alan, who still had the appearance of an unattainable god, but his eyes held an almost obsessive intensity. He let out a soft laugh and covered my eyes with his hand. My eyelashes fluttered, tickling his palm. His voice grew hoarse. "Don't look at me like that." Seeing him like this, I was a little frightened, but I obediently nodded. Alan looked down. "Kathy, don't be afraid of me. I would never hurt you." So, he chose to hurt himself instead. Last night, I had seen the scars on Alan's arm. Old and new, overlapping. I glanced at the desk. The first aid kit that had been there was gone. I think I was starting to understand why Alan always came in here. His body suddenly began to tremble, his jawline tensing. I suddenly felt a surge of anger. I demanded, "When were these photos taken?" Alan looked at me but suddenly fell silent, just like his usual self. I scoffed, suddenly feeling like it was pointless. There was no need to understand anymore. Just as I was about to turn and leave, a flash of panic crossed Alan's eyes. He grabbed my wrist. "Kathy." He pressed his lips together, his eyes fixed on me. "When you were 17. My name used to be Liam. I changed it to Alan later." I glared at him. Who cared what his name used to be? But then, a fragment of a memory surfaced in my mind. When I was 17, my gloomy deskmate's name was Liam. In my memory, his hair was a bit long, covering his eyes. He was tall but far too thin. He was basically invisible. He didn't like to talk. Even though he had the best grades in the class, he was a total loner. And I, when I had nothing better to do, would just rest my head on the desk and sleep. Liam was very quiet. When I was asleep, I could smell the faint scent of soap on him. When I tried to talk to him, he would just give me curt replies, looking incredibly nervous. We were like two parallel lines. Even though we were so close, we never intersected. That was when Sophie and I had just met. We were inseparable, so I told my family's driver not to pick me up from school anymore so I could walk home with her. Then one day, Sophie was out sick. As I passed through the alley by the school, I had the strangest feeling that someone was watching me. I got scared and started running, but I stepped on a glass bottle, twisted my ankle, and almost burst into tears. That's when Liam appeared. He didn't say a word, just crouched down in front of me, signaling for me to get on his back. I immediately climbed on. His body was a bit stiff. After he stood up, he silently carried me all the way to my front door. I turned to thank him, but he just said "You're welcome" in a hoarse voice. The next day, I brought a gift for Liam to thank him, but he didn't come to school. He had transferred. I was a little confused, but it was just a small episode in my life, and I quickly forgot about it. But now, Alan was telling me his name used to be Liam. Then why did you transfer back then? Alan stared at me and sighed. Because I was sick, Kathy. I couldn't believe it. Alan was tall and strong. He didn't look like he'd ever been sick. He even worked out regularly and was fitter than the average person. So, what Finn's mom said was true. Alan seemed to read my thoughts, his expression darkening. Yes. Depression. My eyes widened. I never would have imagined that Alan could have depression. Every day after school, I would follow you from a distance. Until that day, you got scared. So, it was a mix of obsession and depression. Because I got scared, he dropped out and left. Thinking about it that way, everything started to make sense. I remembered the feeling of being followed and watched back then. It was still unsettling, but if that person was Alan, it somehow wasn't as scary anymore. After that incident, I never dared to walk through that alley by myself again. It definitely left a mark. Alan's face grew pale, and a cloud of self-loathing settled over him. Kathy, are you even more scared of me now? What I needed to confirm was, Alan, you like me, don't you? Alan nodded, then clarified. It's not like. He stepped forward and wrapped his arms around my waist, his gaze lowered, looking at me earnestly. It's love. I was prepared to fall into darkness alone, in some forgotten corner, but then you crashed back into my life. I traced the most horrifying scar on Alan's arm. When is this from? Alan was silent for a long time, until I lifted my eyes and stared at him intently. He finally whispered, "The day I agreed to marry you." I was stunned. I was too selfish, and I deserved to be punished for it, Kathy. I can't trap you. I'll only drag you down. I had vaguely sensed Alan's intentional distance and coldness towards me before. But I never thought it was because he had trouble expressing his emotions. I looked down and saw a dark, damp spot seeping through the navy blue sleeve of his shirt. I quickly pushed up his cuff. I saw a fresh wound. It was clearly from today. I did something wrong again. This is the punishment I deserve. The blood was still spreading. I turned and hurried away. When I returned, I saw Alan crouched on the floor in agony, his eyes silently turning red. I sighed. I walked in with the first aid kit and began disinfecting the wound with iodine. After this is clean, I'm taking you to the hospital. This cut is deep, it needs to be treated properly. Alan looked up and stared at me. Don't you want to run away? I'm sick, and I've done something wrong. I put down the supplies and looked directly into his eyes. Alan, last night, I initiated it. It was my choice. You did nothing wrong. The man who became an award-winning actor within 3 years of his debut, thanks to his masterful acting and handsome face, was this insecure in love. I thought for a long time. Alan, let's get you help, okay? I'll be with you. Alan nodded. I let out a sigh of relief, drove him to the hospital to get his wound treated, and then confiscated all the sharp objects in the house. When we got home, I meticulously researched his condition. Then I called Finn. When he heard that Alan had agreed to treatment, he was surprised. My brother agreed to get help? He told me that the Pierce family had tried to get Alan treatment before, but the male therapist had taken an inappropriate interest in Alan's vulnerability. He tried to make a move on Alan, who then pinned him to the ground and nearly killed him. After that, Alan developed a severe aversion to therapy. He refused to go. The therapy sessions were every 3 days. I accompanied Alan to every single one. He wiped a bead of sweat from my forehead. His eyes filled with that deep self-loathing again. I immediately stood on my tiptoes and kissed his lips. He looked up, and the self-loathing was replaced by surprise and delight. His eyes sparkled, as if he really, really liked it. The doctor, who had just walked in, cleared his throat. I blushed and looked down, feeling like a quail. Alan let out a soft chuckle. The doctor told me that because of his mother's early death and his father's coldness, I needed to spend a lot of time with Alan. Alan's condition gradually began to improve. Back at the villa, I stopped Alan as he came out of the bathroom. My fingers trailed across his bare abdomen, just above the white towel wrapped around his waist. Every cell in his body seemed to scream, I like this. Even his eyes were fixated on me. When I pulled my hand back and turned to leave, a wave of disappointment washed over him. I found it amusing. I turned around and walked into the bathroom. Alan stood there, tall and motionless, just watching me. I pulled down the zipper on the side of my dress. Want to join me? His eyes darkened. He nodded obediently. In the throes of passion, my phone rang. It was my mom. Where have you been? Why aren't you home yet? Why are you always running around these days? Who is it you're seeing out there? Alan froze as if someone had hit pause, the muscles in his back tensing. I found it funny. My fingertips traced a path from his Adam's apple, continuing downward. He swallowed hard. Mom, I'm with Sophie. My mom sounded skeptical. Really? I gave a non-committal answer. If you don't believe me, give her a call. After hanging up, I sent Sophie a quick text. Then I leaned in and bit Alan's Adam's apple. A few days later, Finn posted a video and a lawyer's letter. In the video, a drunk Finn is being helped onto a bed by Sienna. But there was another male celebrity in the room. The two of them then started going at it, completely ignoring Finn, who was passed out on the sofa. The man didn't sneak out until just before dawn. And Finn, naturally, had been set up in a classic Badger game. When he woke up in a panic, the room was a mess, and he was alone. When he walked out, a swarm of paparazzi started snapping photos. Finn had indeed blacked out, but a man who is dead drunk passed out is physically incapable of sleeping with someone. He searched for evidence for a long time and finally managed to bribe the other male celebrity to get the full video. He was now suing both of them. The internet went wild with support. I forwarded Finn's post to Sophie. Then I called her. She said, I already knew. Finn showed me that night at the hotel. So? We're together right now. My mouth twitched. I could hear the fawning voice of her little eunuch in the background. Honey, here's the room temperature iced Coke and the not too hot milk you wanted. This was too much. I could only remind her dryly, my mom wants you to come over for dinner. She says she hasn't seen you in a while. Sophie immediately agreed. Okay, I'll be right over. 3 hours later. My mom sat at the dining table, her eyes darting between me and Sophie. So, Sophie dear, Auntie wants to ask you something. Sophie, who had been focused on her food, quickly looked up. Yes, Auntie, what is it? My mom looked at us with a complicated expression for a long time before finally speaking. So, Sophie dear, Auntie was wondering, those dozen or so designer bags and haute couture dresses that were delivered to the house recently, were those all gifts from you to Kathy? Sophie fell silent and glanced at me. I was sweating bullets. All that stuff was from Alan. But we had just gone through the whole divorce drama, and things weren't stable yet. Besides, getting a divorce was one thing, but if we got back together so soon, my mom would just think I was treating divorce like a joke and would lecture me for hours. Thankfully, Sophie had been taking the fall for me for years. I just had to give her a look, and she immediately caught on, smoothly replying. That's right, Auntie. I bought all of that for Kathy. My mom sighed. You silly girl, why are you buying her so many things? She continued her interrogation. And the roses that are delivered every day, you're the one sending those too? Sophie's expression clearly stiffened. Seeing me wink at her, she stammered, yes, Auntie. I thought they were pretty, and Kathy likes them, so I had someone send them to her every day. I secretly gave her a thumbs up. What a great friend. My mom's face was rigid. She looked at Sophie, then at me, and was silent for a long time before she seemed to muster up the courage to finally ask. Then, the hickey on her neck when she came home last night, was that you, too? Sophie's chopsticks clattered to the floor. She clenched her fists and shot me a murderous look. Mortified, she said, yes, Auntie. It was. My mom. My dad choked on a mouthful of rice. After a few coughs, his face beet red, he grabbed his briefcase and stood up. I have something at the office. You guys go ahead and eat. With that, he strode out of the room. The dining room became dead silent. It wasn't until after the meal that my mom finally said, hesitatingly. Auntie knows that you're both divorced now, and maybe you've developed a sense of camaraderie from going through the same thing, and you've mistaken that dependence for love. Since it's been a while since the divorces, and you're both still young, you can go out and find new relationships. You know Auntie isn't a closed-minded or conservative person, but, sometimes, you can't be too open-minded. Sophie's mouth twitched. Okay, Auntie. Hearing her agree, my mom seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. After lunch, Sophie and I went upstairs. The moment we got to my room, Sophie pushed me down onto the bed. Hey! You can't just make me take the blame for everything, you little brat. I quickly begged for mercy. Sophie pinched my cheeks to vent her frustration. Then she asked, wait a minute. What's with the hickey on your neck? Didn't you divorce Alan? Wow, you move fast. Already in a new relationship. Seeing the hickey behind my ear, she teased. Not bad. Much better than Finn's brother. He's got skills. My mouth twitched. Is it possible that it was Alan who did it? Just as I was about to tell Sophie everything, I saw my mom standing in the doorway, holding a fruit platter, her face a mask of shock. Only then did I realize that Sophie was currently pinning me to the bed. Confused, Sophie followed my gaze and looked behind her. She was so scared she leaped off me. Auntie! Auntie! My mom turned and practically ran away. Sophie was on the verge of tears, still shouting after her. Auntie, let me explain. I was laughing so hard I could barely breathe. Sophie smacked me resentfully. You're still laughing. I sat up, wiping the tears of laughter from my eyes. It's fine. I'll go explain to my mom later. Only then did Sophie relax. But she kept pestering me about the hickey. I had no choice but to tell her everything about Alan. Sophie was also surprised. I never would have guessed. Finn's brother has depression? But now that you say it, I remember. Finn always insisted on living with Alan. It must have been to take care of him. I nodded. That was exactly it. Sophie sighed. Well, okay then. Looks like we'll still be family. But, Kathy, are you sure you want to be with Alan? Depression might affect your future. You'll have to take care of him forever. Won't that be too tiring? I knew she was worried. I had hesitated before, too. But that was precisely why I couldn't leave him, especially not now. And Alan was already actively seeking treatment. Sophie let out a breath of relief. Okay. Whatever you do, I'll support you. The divorce petitions had, of course, been withdrawn long ago. Sophie and Finn didn't move back in this time. In Finn's words, my brother doesn't want to see me right now. I raised an eyebrow at Alan. I was just a little sad that I couldn't live with Sophie anymore. But thankfully, their new home was right next door, a 5-step walk away. It was a gift from Alan. The moment they were gone, Alan carried me upstairs. As he stripped me bare, I looked at the man with the dark, intense eyes, on the verge of tears. Weren't you Mr. Abstinence before? How come you have no self-control now? He used to be the type to blush at the slightest kiss. Kathy, is this okay? Me, you've already taken my pants off, and now you're asking? His spine seemed to ripple, coiling in preparation for the assault. He laid siege to my body, conquering every defense and driving deep into my core. The moonlight was bright. Outside the window, the cicadas chirped as a small rose quietly bloomed, unfurling its most vibrant petals. Alan's follow-up medical report from that afternoon lay on the floor. He had found his medicine. A breeze blew in, flipping the page. It read: Psychological treatment complete. Epilogue. 18. I met 17-year-old Kathy. For some reason, my eyes were always drawn to her. She was sleeping. Dreaming of who knows what, she grabbed my hand. Later, I often followed Kathy, watching her from a distance. She was afraid of me. She got hurt. I knew what I was doing was wrong, that it would scare her. So I chose to leave, watching her only from the shadows. I didn't dare appear before her. Until the day Finn and Sophie got married, when I saw her again, dressed as a bridesmaid. I felt like I was losing control. I punished myself in the dark study. I must not have impure thoughts about Kathy. Later. She moved in. I saw her, just woken up, her clothes in disarray. I pressed my lips together and walked away. But my gaze was always on her. Later, Finn asked me if I wanted to marry into the Booth family. I refused. Tossing and turning all night, I went to find Finn again. Perhaps I truly couldn't resist the temptation of becoming Kathy's other half. The moment I said it, I regretted it. But any amount of guilt was worth it. I thought, I must be truly disgusting. I didn't deserve Kathy at all. I didn't dare allow my greed to grow, so I punished myself out of habit. Kathy doesn't know that I had planned to quietly leave this world a month after Finn's wedding. But then she appeared. Like a ray of light, shining on me once again. I knew I couldn't drag Kathy down with me, so I didn't dare touch her. But I also knew that this was unfair to Kathy. When she asked for a divorce, I was heartbroken, but I couldn't imprison her. But the guilt spread through my heart. When Kathy said she wanted me, I was overjoyed. At least, I was needed. After my mom found out about my dad's affair, she punished herself by jumping. And I just stood there, watching, numb. It felt like I had lost all the sounds in the world. From then on, aside from my wedding day, I never went back to the family estate. But he asked Kathy to go there. I was worried about her, so I went. That was the last time. Kathy discovered my secret. She must be disgusted by me. But she didn't leave. Perhaps it was all just my own cowardice. Later. My moon was not disgusted with me. She fell into my arms. And from then on, she never left.